Hi everyone and welcome to my place. Today I want to share with you how to take up the hem of actually anything, whether it's a skirt, a shirt, a t-shirt, a vest, a jumper, or a dress. Now this is the dress that I've just made and I could sew it with the sewing machine, but sometimes that just isn't practical. It could be a stretch knit fabric, it could be a fine silk or chiffon fabric, and when you stitch it you're going to see the machine stitching. Not always advisable. It's really easy to do, and it's, you might not even have a sewing machine, and how am I going to take the hem up? Well, you don't need to go and employ somebody to do that. You can do it yourself. So determine the length that you want it to be when it's finished, and I always add a good inch. Now ½ inch is going to be for turn up, and then the other ½ inch is just going to give me a nice line, a nice neat inline, because, and pretty much what I'm talking about is, if you don't have a zigzag on your machine, and I'm assuming that because you don't, you're going to have to be learning how to hand sew it. But if you do have a zigzag on your machine, all of these little edges here need to be caught so that they don't unravel. Now I'll show you what I mean by that, and it'll be easier on this. So here's a bit of fabric that I've got here, right? And you'll see all those, one, the line isn't straight. Two, you've got all this excess bit of fabric here. If you've got your zigzagger, you can zigzag along, cut that off, make it straight, and then zigzag along there, and that will just mean that it won't continue to fray. I have been able to do that on this machine, and I'm not going to go on this dress. I'm not going to do it on the dress at this stage. What I am going to do is I'll demonstrate it on this, because this will be the best way. So let's just assume that this is your skirt, okay? Or whatever you've just cut. So the first thing I like to do is I like to give it a bit of an iron, and you also need to straighten up that hem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that white line there as my guide, and I'm going to come along here and I'm going to determine what is my shortest length. So from there to there, it's about 2¼ inches. So I'm just going to mark it at that 2-inch mark there. So just go right to one end here, and this is, all of this across here is all surplus to requirement. Now you might just have the straightest eye in the world and think, oh, for goodness sake, I'm just going to use my eye to do that, and that's fine, but I can't trust my eye. So it's, for me, it's always far safer to measure and to do it properly, so that we're all measured off before we begin, so that we've got a nice straight line. So that's all, but hold on, I'll just do this bit here, and a little bit of time now just will determine a nice neat finish at the end of your project. So once you've done that, it's just a matter now of, if you've got nice sharp scissors, just cutting straight, cut off all of that yucky bit there that's just not, look, that's excess fabric, and if it's not nice and straight before you start, you're going to, oops, and I didn't cut that straight there. I can see that that's not straight. So just cut that through there and get rid of that. So all of that anyway into a hem. If you just use that line there as your guide, you're going to have a hem that goes all the way around like that. We want a nice straight hem here. Okay, once you've done that, and it's just a matter, so because you don't have a zigzagger, what we need to do, when I was talking about, allow an inch, ½ inch to turn it up, and it's just a matter now of turning that up ½ inch right across, and then pressing it. Pressing is going to be your friend moving forward. So we want to get rid of all of that surplus fabric there, to turn that all over ½ inch, and then do another ½ inch. I'm just going to take that just a little bit higher, because I want to actually show you the type of stitching that's necessary. So this here, just pressing that down. If you've got a steam on your iron, give that a wee steam as you go, because the steaming will make sure that it stays in place. The other thing that you need to do is check that the temperature on your iron, because if it is different fabrics, like if it's acrylic, you can't put a linen setting onto your iron, otherwise you'll just burn it all off. Okay, it'll just melt and disintegrate. Okay, from there the next thing is to get your pin and to pin right across, pin right across to just hold it in place. Even though you have pressed it, it may move. So if you just pin this across here now, you'll just know that it keeps nice and straight. So this is the inside or the wrong side of the fabric, and there is the right side there. And the great thing about the black and the white is that I can see, make sure that this here is all the same. So if it's ½ inch there, it needs to be ½ inch here, otherwise your hem's going to be up and down. Okay, once you get to there, it's just a matter of, with matching thread, I'm going to use the red so that you can see what I'm doing. Getting your needle, I use a bigger needle than what I would normally use, and I'll just thread this up. Oh my goodness, I do need to get new glasses. Okay, so pull that through, cut that off there. Oops, these scissors are so not sharp. And then I'll just do a little wee, you can either just turn it around like that to make a little knot on the end, or if you can't do that, the other way is to just turn that up like that so that you've got a little loop there, and then just take your needle through, bring that needle down, and then put it through the second little loop again, and then just, oops, that do it? Yeah, it did. It's not a very big knot, but it's enough for what I need it to do now, just to hold that as I go to do the next page. Right, from there, the next thing to do is to get your hem, and you take your needle through the folded bit, take that up into there, and then you might just need to do another little stitch and take that through there just to hold it so that it stays in location. Right, to do the hem, it's just a matter of very, very gently going into the fibre of the base, because we don't want to see any red stitch appearing through the other side. So it's just a matter of going through and taking the finest couple of little fibres from the underneath side, and then taking that up and through to the bit that you have just folded over, like so, and then repeating that process, taking it through there. Oh, hold on, oops, I didn't quite get that right. Taking just a little as tiny, so it's very difficult for me with this big needle. I need a finer needle. The finer the needle, the better it is. So bringing that through underneath, and then taking that through to the bit that you've folded as your hem. And then I always check to make sure that I can't see that little stitch on the other side, and I can now as I look at it, which is an indicator that I've taken too much, when I need to just pull the little fibres from this end, getting rid of that. So and making sure that your stitches are all the same length. Just all you're doing is just catching one of the little threads that's running up your fabric, going to there, taking that across, taking another little piece of fabric, taking that up to there, and then pulling that firm, but not too firm so that it pulls that in. And it just, you can see my little stitches across there. See how I've got my stitches? You can hardly see them. So that is pretty much the basic theory of taking up the hem of anything. And getting back to my dress here, I always start at the back. And as I said, if I don't have any zigzaggy stitches, it's just a matter of just ironing that down. And it doesn't matter, I'm using that ½ inch as my guide at this stage. You might find that if you're letting something down, so it's taking it up or letting it down, that you don't have very much. But just by double turning that over, making sure that that is all the same length, all the way along. And then the next little problem that I hear from people is, like, as you go around the whole thing and pin as you go, just working in little small areas and catching it with the pin to keep it in place. until it's all done. Now, the next thing is people say to me, well, what colour thread will I use? Well, when I look into into this fabric here, I'm seeing the black, I'm seeing the grey, I'm seeing the red, but I'm pretty much seeing more of the cream. So I would use that cream. The other thing is, because this is quite a fine fabric, it's not nearly as, when you look into this here, you can actually see you can see where it's been made. You can see the threads running up, and you can sometimes see the threads running across. Those little threads that I was picking up are those fine ones that are running vertical. They might even be running horizontal depending on what you're doing. But they need to, and that's quite a thick fabric, because this is quite a fine fabric. Picking up those little threads is going to mean that I'm going to have to be seriously super careful and quite mindful of how I do it. And I'm going to have to go quite slow about it. And the next thing I need to share with you is this size needle is, well, that's an embroidery needle, one that you would use for wool. This one here is still quite thick, but this needle here is really quite fine. So the finer the needle you would use is the finer the fabric. So, because when I look into this, I'm going to have to just be very careful with the little thread that I'm going to be picking up. So I'm going to be picking up not more than what you can see there, if you can see it. Yeah, so it's the finest, because you don't really want to be seeing anything coming through the other side. So when I go through, I can only just almost see the needle. So that is probably as good as what I'm going to get. So there you have the fundamentals of taking up or letting down the hem of pretty much anything. So I hope that that's been of assistance to you, and it just means that you can do your own taking up or taking down from now on. Hope you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed sharing it with you, and I look forward to seeing you all again another day.